Okay. Whoa, that was strange music during our break. I'm Joe. He's Nick, and you're listening to the Nick and Joe Show, hour number 2, for November the 4th, 2020. Boy, time is just flying by, Nick. Yeah, that was interesting music, and then the introduction was actually, pretty zen. And by the way, I was thinking this you're not going to hear it, so it's why bother playing it? I was going to play my Donald Trump calm down, zen music in the background here. Okay. I played a little bit of zen music in the background there just to set the mood.
Joseph.
Yeah, I know. Can you hear me, Nick?
Okay.
I knew you could hear me.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Okay, Nick's trying to get organized. He rushed back to the computer because, he had to take a break during that break time. So while he gets organized, okay, he's organized, but just let me go through the motions here again. If you want to join if you're listening to the show live and you want to join our chat live, click on the chat bubble on the player. You may have to register. You may have to log in one way or the other. That's just to make sure that you're a real flesh and blood human being. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast rather than the live show, you could still do the same thing and leave comments. It's not a problem. But unfortunately, we will not be able to read your comments in real time and respond to them. Although, Nick, I'm going to have to tell you, you have to maybe check out some of the comments and stuff, see if people are leaving comments actually during the podcast and start commenting there rather than just being attached to Twitter. But anyway, let's move away from the United States election for a while, for now, Nick. And we were talking a little bit about some new government policies or proposals and the impact that in Canada anyway that these proposals look like they're going to have on the farm community, on agriculture. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Nick?
All right. Well, there's a magazine or a newspaper out there dedicated to the agriculture community called the Farmers Forum. And on the Farmers Forum, I get it in the mailbox, and it keeps me apprised of what the major issues are in agriculture in Eastern Ontario. Now, for those of you listening in jurisdictions outside Ontario, this is the same kind of that has happened all over North America. It's just that this happens to be the area we're talking about, but it's all about really what it boils down to is land rights. So give me a minute. Let me read to you a couple of paragraphs about this particular policy. It hasn't been passed yet, but this is what they want to do. Okay, so the headline is Crop Killer. Government wants to stop global warming. Okay, well, we'll set that aside for right now because we all know about global warming. Here's what we're talking about. It's something called the Clean Fuel Standard, and it is proposed environmental regulation that will limit future land clearing, take cropland out of production, according to the critics. Here's directly from the article, and I quote, Ottawa's proposed environmental regulation called the Green Fuel Standard is unnerving a lot of people. It's been called a second tax on carbon dioxide that will drive up household costs and at the same time take agricultural land out of production and limit future land clearing. The proposed Clean Fuel Standard is unworkable for the farmers, said Grain Farmers of Ontario Chair and St. Isidore farmer Marcus Harrell. Ottawa plans to introduce the new regulation in just over a year. The current proposal is part of the government's monumental effort to drastically reduce carbon dioxide emissions while boosting the biofuel industry and its need for feedstock. The proposed regulation is getting vociferous blowback. Local farmers are vexed by its formidable limitations. Environment Canada proposes, now get this, okay, For those of you who are old school like me, they're proposing a 30-meter buffer strip around every ditch of at least 1 meter deep. What that means is a 100-foot wide strip around every ditch that is at least 3 feet deep. Okay, that gives you an idea. So you can't go anywhere near that creek or ditch, and it has to have 100 feet on each side. It's not just on one side or the other. Like it doesn't split the middle. You're talking about 200 feet, 200 wide swath right to the middle of your farm. Okay, I digress. The proposal also dictates that no farmer can sell crop to the biofuel industry if he clears land after 2019. Joseph, what year is it, Joseph?
I'm just calculating in my head, Nick.
Check your calendar.
I think it's after 2019.
That's the point. It's 2020 now. Okay. The Grain Farmers of Ontario is opposed to any deadline on land clearing because Eastern Ontario farmers cleared a lot of land in 2020, and there's a lot of forest that's not yet been cleared for farming. There could be as much as 30% tree cover in some areas, unlike southwestern Ontario, where 92% of land in the counties of Chatham and Kent have already been cleared for agriculture. The proposed regulations is bad news, he said. I don't see anything positive behind the proposal. It is unacceptable to farmers in Ontario. If the proposed regulation is not changed, it will increase farm costs, lower return on investment where farms are forced to grow less profitable crops, and lower farmland prices, he said. Some farms will see production and revenue contraction. He said it will create frustration. To put it mildly, anyway, it goes on. There's even if you're doing environmentally friendly activities, it doesn't matter. There's no compensation for the farmer for this. And what it boils down to is they're simply taking control of people's land by fiat. They're not, they're going to pass a law. These guys have no say, and if you don't like it, tough. And this is why a few years ago I went on the bandwagon and I beat that drum senselessly. I did tours all over Ontario. I've got flown out west to talk about land grant patents. Now, just for people who don't know what land grant patents are, bear with me just a minute. It won't. I can explain it relatively quickly. A letters patent is an article, a legal document used to pass authority from the Crown to a private individual. There's all kinds of them. Lawyers get one when they approach the bar, when they write the bar. If you go and have an invention patented, you are receiving a letters patent guaranteeing your ownership of that invention. A land grant patent does the same thing, but with land, with real estate. And within it, most land grant patents around here were issued in the anywhere from 1815. In the farther east you go, the older they get. But in Ontario, there was somewhere in the 1800s. Mine was 1874, I think, for my property. And unless it's written in the land grant patent that the state cannot interfere with what you're doing. There are certain reservations, like if you had white pine on your property, the Crown might say, we're reserving the white pine just in case France gets stupid and we have to go back to war and rebuild the Navy again. They wanted a supply of lumber. There might be mineral rights that they ceded to themselves. In the case there was gold, tin, or lead, very valuable metals. Okay, if you found them on your land, they belong to the Crown. Now, those have been revoked, and now if you find it, it's yours. Same thing with the white pine restrictions. Those are gone now, too. But what people don't understand is the reason they carry so much authority and they trump all legislation is because there's two reasons. One, they bear the Great Seal of Britain, which was Queen Victoria's seal. And they also carry within it the following sentence: to his heirs and assigns forever. Now, the part that drives the legislators crazy is they can't find another definition of forever that gets them around the end of the land grant patent. They just can't do it because forever means exactly what it says. So if you were to buy, let's say, Joseph, I sold you 5 acres of land off my property, hypothetically, then you would have the same rights I do on that property as contained in my letters patent. And what these guys need to do with this is they need to get their land grant patents. They need to know what restrictions are in them and which ones are not, and then post their land, because otherwise they're toast. The government will just come in and steamroll right over top of them.
So are these federal regulations, or is this federal law right now? Is it the federal government or the provincial government?
Let me make sure I'm right. Ottawa's proposed environmental regulations, right there. So it's Ottawa's. It's not Queen's Park, and it's not municipal. This would be on a federal level.
Huh.
And the stuff that, Joseph, I can't tell you, the stuff that's in this. If any new land is cleared, said Morseburg crop farmer Arden Schickenberger, who sits on a government relations committee for the grain farmers of Ontario, all you have to have cleared is 2 acres, and it eliminates your entire land holding. In other words, one guy did checked out his 1,200 acre farm under this new legislation. He'd lose, I forget what the number is now, 8% of his total farm area to things like these 100-foot wide strips and all that sort of thing. Well, 8% doesn't sound like much, but that can make the difference between making it and not making it if you can't plow it or you can't plant it and then harvest the grain that grows from it. The margins aren't that great in agriculture, so every square foot of ground counts. And when these guys come along, and this is, again, I go back to this idea that the best defense is knowing what your rights are and insisting that they be followed. And the land grant patent, they cannot get around it because of the Great Seal. Because keep it in mind, too, about the Great Seal that's on these land grant patents. That's the same seal that is on the native treaties. So if they were to repeal a land grant patent, that means the treaties could be repealed. And nobody's going to do that.
Right, but that's political rather than constitutional. You can abrogate any agreement. There are consequences to it, but you could break any agreement, any contract. But it's apart from the legal ramifications here that we're talking about, Nick, right now, is again, this is just it's another indication of bureaucrats who are supported by politicians who have no concept whatsoever, no knowledge, no understanding of what they're doing in portions of the country or in industries or in trades or whatever that they simply don't know anything about. And so they come up with these ideas that sound good, although I'm struggling to find what part of this sounds good. I mean, what good is intended to come from this? But let's assume, give people the benefit of the doubt. They're looking at this, they're going, we really have to save this part of the environment, and this is the best way that we can think of how to do it. They're completely detached from the reality of the consequences of their decisions. And we see this over and over and over again with government here in Canada, in the United States, and quite frankly around the world, particularly in Western societies where we've become so big, governments have become so big, so intrusive, so bloated, so bureaucratic. It's a real problem. I'm still waiting for the political party or the political movement. I want to say to reverse these trends and start to shrink the scope and size of government, because I think inevitably this is something that's got to be done. But I don't see it happening. I don't see where it's going to come from. Because people they generally are afraid now. We've got a whole society that we've constructed where we've indoctrinated people into the belief